So I want to talk about Tommaso first before I look at Annie's. Now, I do think Tommaso, there's a lot of things that Tommaso does that are quite strange. And I'm going to show you something that I think it was JLR shared on his page. Let's see what it. You know, thing about JLR is, you know, I know there's a lot going on at the moment with these allegations of domestic abuse and everything, but he does get a lot of information because he has got so many followers, and they all send him information, don't they? And he does. Isn't it a fun thing that I get lined up? I line everything up for my lives, and then things disappear. Come on. Of course, having a slow computer doesn't help because then you have to wait for it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So this is Tommaso's, I suppose it's his bio, you'd call it, on the website of the school where he works. So he works at Basis Oro Valley Primary. And this was a bio that was put on there quite a long time ago. So it's March the 2nd, 2015, highlighting Tommaso as a teacher there. So let's have a look at it. Now, I think it's very interesting. I think Tommaso, from what we can tell, is a very popular teacher. But of course, we have to remember that that means nothing because we've seen that recently with Preston Davies' murderer. He's a popular teacher at high school. You know, at high schools especially, I think, students do like quirky teachers, don't they? You know, you think back to when you're at school. I mean, I've taught teenagers. They're teenagers. They're like either really difficult. You know, if a teenager doesn't want to learn, if some parents bring their child to do Spanish classes with me, and that teenager doesn't want to do them, really, they're only coming because their parents are bringing them, you may as well save your money. I've actually said that to people. Look, they don't want to learn. They're not interested in learning. You're just wasting your money because they're never going to learn. And that is true. That's one extreme of teenagers. However, if they want to learn, oh my God, they are brilliant students. They're inquisitive, they've got inquiring minds, they're quick on the uptake, but they have to have an interest. Now, sometimes you can find a way of teaching them Spanish in an interesting way. That's what I always try and do. I find out what their interests are. So maybe they're not really that bothered about learning Spanish, but maybe they like football, or there's a certain, you know, maybe like Harry Potter if they're a young teenager, or there's always a way that you can find something. Maybe they're interested in boxing or volleyball or, you know, just something, even video games and things like that. So you find what they're interested in. And if you can find what they're interested in, you can teach them Spanish in that way. Sometimes you can do it that way. But if they're really not interested in teaching Spanish, they don't want to come to the classes because it's interfering with their time with their friends or whatever, just might as well forget it. It's just pointless. And if they don't want to learn, you can't make them learn. There's nothing that will make a teenager want to learn unless you can find something that will captivate their interest. So it's quite often popular teachers at high schools, you know, who are dealing with teenagers. It's different with little children. You know, they you can easily captivate them and get them interested and stuff. But and they want to please the teacher normally. The thing is about the adolescent students that they can't be, you know, even over 21 year old as far as they're concerned. So, I'd be like ancient. But that doesn't mean say they don't like, I've had teenagers who love coming to classes with me. So, it doesn't mean say you can't reach them anyway. You shouldn't try and be their friend anyway. You're not their friend, you're their teacher. But quite often with adolescents, then they respond better to quirky teachers, like, don't know, they have a different way of responding. It's hard to explain, why some teachers are hated by their pupils and other teachers are loved by their pupils. But just because, like Preston Davies' dad and Tommaso, popular with their students, doesn't mean say that they're necessarily nice people. It means say they're good teachers of adolescents. So I just want to make that clear. But anyway, again, this every view that I express on my videos, you always have to remember, it's just my view. It's my opinion. That's all. Please disagree with me if you want to. Anyway, so Tommaso Sioni at this time was sixth grade and AP biology teacher. How long have you taught at Basis? This is my 5th year teaching at Basis, Oro Valley. So I'd been at this place 5 years. I don't know if that's the school he's still at or not. What do you love most about teaching? I love the fact that I'm able to share my passion for learning with my students. Since I teach 6th grade and AP biology, I love seeing them growing from pre-teens to young adults. So it's very difficult. I think for a teacher, it's quite difficult that to teach, teens and young adults. As I say, they'll either love you or they'll hate you. There's a way, anyway, he seems to be popular. I love seeing them grow from preteens to young adults and see them express their potential. Now then, listen to this. Who is your role model? My dad taught me the love for nature. Love for nature. You just think, well, remember Nancy's buried with nature. Is it a coincidence, that language? And then the other thing that jumped out to me, and it's all bloody Erin Patterson's fault, the mushroom murderess. I still go and forage for mushrooms with him when I go back to Italy. Now, of course, this was 10 years ago. I don't know if his dad's still alive or not. I still go and forage. So he's a mushroom forager. As soon as I read that, honestly, this is, I say, it's all Erin Patterson's fault, the mushroom murderess. Anyone now that I see is foraging for mushrooms, I think, oh my God, who they're planning on poisoning. I think that case, the mushroom murders case, and that we covered extensively, I think it had an effect on all of them. I've never I do eat mushrooms again now, but for quite a while I wouldn't even eat mushrooms, and they used to be my favourite food. So yeah, he's a mushroom forager. My mum taught me the love for cooking and to cherish food. Now, of course, Tommaso is Italian, I believe. Now, I've never heard him speak, so does he still have an Italian accent? Is his first language Italian, or was he brought up in America? I don't know. But again, to cherish food. That's quite flowery language, isn't it? Like, I mean, I love food. I don't know that I cherish it. I don't know if is he using that because English is not his normal language, his native language. So again, it fits in with this sort of perish and buried in nature. What do you think of that? I mean, am I reading too much into it? And I don't want to cast shade on Tommaso because I don't know. Do you know what I want is for them to catch whoever did it, and then it would, because although Nanos has said the family and their spouses are cleared, we don't believe what he tells us. And how can they be cleared when the real perpetrators still haven't been caught? Nothing makes sense, does it? So my mum taught me the love for cooking and to cherish food. These two passions still define who I am today. If you weren't a teacher, I would be a rock star, of course. Yeah, because he plays in a band, doesn't he? A rock band. Oh, wait, I am a rock star, so I guess I'd be a herpetologist. Is that a skin doctor? Is that something? What's a herpetologist? Herpetologist. Look at that, I'm learning new English words. Oh. Oh, no, nothing to do. Completely wrong. Won't be the first time or the last time. A herpetologist is a zoologist who studies reptiles. For example, snakes, lizards, turtles, amphibians. For example, frogs and salamanders. Focusing heavily on ecological roles and conservation. Nature, of course. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know what a herpetologist was. A scientist who studies amphibians and reptiles. There you go. I've learned something new today. You should try and learn something new every day, they say, don't they? And a fun fact, I write poetry in Italian. So he's a poet as well. But I don't know if this classifies as a fun fact. Oh, and I got a parasite during my trip to Costa Rica, and I let it be in my leg for 3 months to show my kids the parasite host relationship firsthand. Gross, right? So he got a parasite while he was on a trip to Costa Rica. And people do pick up parasites, ticks, etc. But he left it in his leg for 3 months. I would have thought that would be dangerous, to be honest. He let it be in his leg for 3 months so he could show his kids the parasite host relationship. Oh, I don't know about that. But anyway, there you go. So there's a few things in that bio that sort of stand out to me. First of all, the thing about the love for nature, then the foraging for mushrooms, but that's Erin Patterson's fault. Using the word cherishing food. Again, quite poetic word. But then he says he writes poetry, but in Italian. And then he left a parasite in his leg for 3 months so he could show his students. What do you think? Anyway, so I wanted to show you that. Now I want to go and look at Annie's poetry. Now we've looked at Annie's poetry before. It's dark. There's a lot of talk of death and cold and all that. It's not cheerful poetry, is it? It's not poetry that will get you up in the morning and make you inspired to face the day. It's like, oh my God, it's like gothic almost, isn't it? But again, that doesn't mean say she's a murderer, does it? You look at books that Stephen King has written. How many books has he written? All those horror books, there's serial killers in them, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful people in them. But as far as we know, Stephen King never murdered anybody. You know, other horror writers, the same. So you can't, just because someone writes about dark subjects, does not mean to say that, you know, they've killed someone. So I just want to put that out there before I show you these very dark poems. So we've looked at a couple of them, but this I think is perhaps, this one is dark because it had images with it as well. And again, I have to give JLR credit for this. That somebody sent it to him. I think I picked it up off his his Twitter account. There's like a Google link to it. These are all things that are in the public domain, by the way. These are not things that people have stolen from Annie. Annie is I suppose she's really a famous poet in her world. You know, I wouldn't say she's a poet but what poets are famous, like in these days, in you know, in outside of literary circles, really poets aren't famous, are they? You know, it's not like songwriting. I mean, I love poetry. I absolutely, I mean, I don't mind a bit of dark poetry, a bit of sad poetry. I love poetry. So it intrigues me. You know, Annie is a respected poet in her circle, in literary circles. But unfortunately for her now, because of what's happened, her poetry is so dark. So obviously when people look it up, they're thinking, oh my God. And who does that remind you of a bit? That's a bit like David, isn't it? DV4D or whatever his stupid name is, who's allegedly murdered Celeste Rivas. Then when you look at his songwriting, romantic homicide, etc., the weird videos that he's done, but he is guilty, isn't he? But he's only, at the moment, he's innocent until proven guilty. But there's more evidence against him. There is no evidence against Annie except for her poetry being a little bit dark. You know, so you can't hang, draw, and quarter someone on that basis. But having said that, I do think it's important to talk about it. And, you know, I don't know how Annie feels. I bet, you know, she's never had so much interest, you know, outside of her literary circles that she sort of lives in. She's got now all this added interest. Everyone wants to read Annie's poetry and read her book that she's supposed to have coming out, but that's disappeared. You know, Annie's probably trying to keep a low profile, but it's just impossible. Do you know what? It's impossible. I think the family, as much as I feel for them, they do have to accept, you know, people are interested in this case. You're never going to turn that off. This is a mysterious case, and people do genuinely care, and whatever they might think. All of us, you know, we stand for Nancy, but not only that, for what that means for us as human beings. That if this could happen to Nancy, it could happen to us, our grandma, our sister. So this could happen to any relative, our auntie, someone we love, sleeping at night in their bed at the grand old age of 84, where you should be like just really, you know, enjoying your last sort of golden years, and not with all the stresses generally of life, certainly not of some bloody masked armed twat coming into your house and taking you from your bed in your pajamas and no shoes. You're not going to tell people not to be interested in that, not to want to know what's happened to Nancy. You can't. Whether you're the family or not, in a way, we're all Nancy's family now, a little bit. You know, we respect the family, of course we do. But most people, they want to know what happened to Nancy. It's not because they hate the family or anything. And unfortunately, Tommaso and Annie, they were the last people to see Nancy. So that is just the facts of the matter. So until so surely, if I was Annie, I'd like, please let this perpetrator be found so people stop talking about me. But they don't seem to be encouraging. We need your help, Savannah said. But really, then she's phoning the police to have YouTube streamers taken away who are trying to do something at least. So it's a very strange one.